Hello, welcome to the podcast. Today, I have a super cool guest. I have Lori Woodley-Langendorff, and we are talking about how to get things done. And she comes to us straight from allitakes.org. And thank you, Lori, for coming on this show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, Cher, thank you for having me. It's fun to be here and fun to be in conversation with people who are, trying getting things done and serving others to do the same. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, I love how we came in contact because it was random. It was at
Mhm.
the California Counselors Conference. And I felt so excited when I was asked to just do a little bit of interviewing for a project that you all are doing. And when I came in, you and I just started talking and we just like, wait a minute, how long have we known each other? 3 seconds. And I just knew in that moment, even I was like, wow, I wonder if I could have a conversation on my podcast. And so I was just felt so blessed when you said yes. So I'm glad we're here today, finally getting this done.
Oh, me too. Our schedules are busy, but like we're like-minded people, and it's important. I think that it's important to me to be in communication with people who are like-minded, who we can banter and we can challenge each other and we can uplift, right? And that's really important to me. And I listen to several of your podcasts, and I just love what you bring your audiences. So it is a proud moment to be involved with your podcast.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
great. Thank you so much. I mean, allitakes.org, you have some really incredible videos on there, but I really just want you to talk to me about how did allitakes.org come about and what is it? What's its mission?
So all it takes is we're a nonprofit organization founded in 2010 while I was still a school counselor full time. And our mission is to equip youth and those who serve them with social emotional skills to positively live their lives. Like our mission is to support our students and those of us who are serving our students to live extraordinary lives
Mm,
and healthy lives. So that's the work that all it takes is about. It's the work that as counselors we're about every day when we're in classrooms or on a campus. And it came from a place of me being a counselor for 20, I think at the time, about 24 years,
mhm.
and just feeling like there was more to do, more for me to take what I was doing on a single campus and expand it because I saw the results, the powerful results of what experiential learning is, which is what our focus is at all it takes is
Mhm.
everything needs to be seen, heard, experienced, and felt.
Oh, yeah.
But we often stay away from that feeling point, like we're not necessarily comfortable with it,
Mm.
both for ourselves and for those we're serving or those we're in relationship with. And so, but what I realize, and I think your work says the same, even solution focused, is, we have to experience something and feel it in order to want to choose a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so, right, choose more of or choose less of or choose into or choose out of. That all comes because we feel something.
Mm.
And that's really the work of all it takes.
Yeah, people might think like it takes a lot, but I like it that you made it say all it takes, because you could say it in many different ways. It could be like, all it takes is this, just go for it. Or it could be like, you do all it takes, like you could think of it in many different fashions. But I
Yeah.
think that when you look at it becomes clear that your heart is for people to be able to thrive. And it's so heartwarming to be able to talk frankly about the problems that someone might be facing, but then turning the corner and saying, you know what, and here's how you can progress, and here's how you can move forward, and here's how it's okay that you might be having a big challenge. And I'm just so thankful that you're able to put that out there because so many people don't feel heard in this world today.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of conversation about feeling heard, but that conversation and doing and conversation and results are not the same thing. I see that a lot, right? That, there's an intention, but an intention isn't turning into results.
Yeah,
And, what is that about? So, the website, we have expert videos, like I think there's over 50 of them now.
it's unbelievable.
There's we focused when 2020 hit, I received a text from a local director of curriculum and instruction, a client of ours, and she said, please make a film on trauma. If our teachers have to
Mm.
pay to attend a workshop, they'll never understand, and we're going to need them to. And like literally 2.5 months later, we had an award-winning film out. Like we'd never
Wow.
made a film, just like
Wow.
everybody else. No, we weren't filmmakers.
Y-
We had not done films.
no,
Um,
you were filling a need
and
is
so
basically.
we did, because
Mhm.
what else were we going to do? We're experiential, right? Everything we always used to do was in front of people, like so many people in schools. And then suddenly, as an organization, we had an opportunity to pivot. So, coming back out of the pandemic, we now have this whole film arm, which is just free resources that are just so beautifully done with youth voices, parent voices, educator voices, and expert voices on all things, mental health or trauma or bullying or community building and relationship building. And so that series, the Trusted Space series, became something we that almost took on a life of its own.
Mhm.
And now we work with people in front of them and in trainings. And we also have this just library of resources,
Yeah.
um, that I feel really proud of. And we hear from people like, wow, that 2-minute video or that 20-minute video on brain science and behavior is approachable and is understandable. And it's like talking to me as a human being
Yeah.
and as a parent or as a student, without talking at me or intellectually. It's like talking to me in language I understand. And so I feel good about that. Like, I want to be in service too,
Yeah.
not, yeah, like if people can't hear what we're saying, then they can't feel heard.
Yeah. And then they are I don't even know if inspire is the right word, but they're inclined to want to take that step forward that they need to take whatever it is that they need to do. They're inspired to do it in that way because really we know that when someone is stuck, sometimes just being heard and being understood allows them to then open their mind enough, and that's solution focused as well, to say, well, if I was to do something different, what would it be? They might not even believe it yet, but they're like, well, what if I was? And then a little spark happens. And then there's that push to say, go for it. You've got this. And then people are just, then they have the ability to expand. It can start from a video. It's something as simple as that can ignite a huge fire within somebody.
Yeah, and I think that when you watch something that's short and approachable and, like attainable, and there is that motivation, like, oh, I see myself in there. I
Mm-hmm.
see someone I care about in there. I see a teacher I can relate to in that film. When we can relate to story, we can relate
Mm-hmm.
to somebody else's experience, and we're more apt to also, like you're saying, identify with it to then, well, maybe I could have some of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could create some of that.
Yeah.
And that belief in ourselves, both youth and adults. And some people are always surprised when I use the adults. Like, we're not just talking about students, we're
No.
talking about humans. We're
Yeah.
talking about humans, and everything our students need, we need. And so I think that in watching these films, especially, like, let's say we're struggling with a child who is just won't go to school, or a child who is disengaged from
Mm-hmm.
school, or a parent who's just not able to understand what's going on with their teenager that suddenly became someone they're kind of like, I don't
Wait, isn't that
recognize you.
everybody that
What's
has a teenager?
like, what's coming out of your mouth right now? Like, what
Exactly.
is that? And how did, like,
I have a
wait,
teenager. You're speaking to me.
yeah, right. I had them. They're older now, but yeah, and for us to understand more, and I didn't understand this stuff when
Yeah.
my kids. Yeah, I was a school counselor. I had lots of training, but I didn't understand a lot of the brain science,
That's true.
and um, I didn't. I didn't know the things I know today, and isn't it
Mhm.
a hindsight thing, right? Like, I would have done that different and that different. I would approach
So
that
differently,
situation
I
different.
know. But anybody
But
that's if for those of you that are listening right now, where this is like, wow, this is the type of thing that you want to know more of. Before we even go any further, jot it down. It's going to be in the show notes. Allittakes.org, because all of this stuff is under there. It's like under one umbrella. And so you could just kind of decide what what video, what you're interested in. It's really great. I'm really glad you have that out there. And then the other thing, this is what I'm super excited to talk to you about. So we were together, and we were at the, okay, I'm going to take us back to, we're in the interview place, right? And then
Hmm.
you're talking to me. We're just doing interview stuff. We're dressed nicely. And then you said that you were heading off to the mountains to have parents jump off things and experience, and you went straight from there to one of your conferences, right? To help people. And that just intrigued me. It like blew my mind. I'm like, what is she doing with these people? And you're like, you told me something like, you're like, well, the parents need to do the same things they're asking their kids to do. And I'm like, of course they do. But I want you to talk to me about that, because that's so important for a concept for us to understand that you're just helping people with.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't even really love personally the word help.
Yeah.
Like, a lot
Share
of
with
people,
me.
and
Give it to me.
I guess I don't love it because it doesn't work for so many people. So the intention of what we're trying to do when we say help doesn't always land well. And so it pushes people away when we're really just trying to pull them towards
Like,
us.
I
And
don't need
we're
your
like, wait,
help.
what just happened? Right.
Yeah.
Like help somehow has this sense of, like I got this, right? So we're a society of raising kids and being adults who like, I got this, lone wolves, right? And so even just support or
Yeah.
just knowing somebody would be there if you needed them to be. I'm all about use the language people can hear, not the language you want to, you want to use. Like
Yeah.
if you want to talk to somebody who can't hear help, use something else. But I do think that, in fact, I don't just think this. I believe this because I experience this. Adults like to ask kids to do many things that kids are resistant to.
Mm.
And then we're often frustrated by that. We're frustrated that they don't want to do their homework, or they don't want to empty the dishwasher, or they don't want to take their paper out and turn their homework in that they did and it's in their backpack, but they don't turn it in. And like that is a big disconnect for an adult. Like, you did it, it's with you, and you still didn't put it in the box, like, or you didn't hit send now, and so much of this stuff is online, right? Like, how does that even happen? And so we're kind of like, we don't understand them,
Right.
but we're asking them to do something without really understanding their barriers,
Mm.
right? We're just not, because it makes so much sense to us that they would just do it, and it doesn't make sense to us that they wouldn't. So often we're not really looking to ask and really dive not so deep into like any of the why, but just like what's happening in that moment, like, and what do you think could be a solution to that? Like
Yeah.
those are the things that we talk about. But then there's the adults. So we have all these families, right, and teachers
Yeah.
who procrastinate but ask their
Hmm.
kids not to,
Yeah.
who get snippy, snappy, argumentative, isolating, quiet,
Whatever
sullen,
it is. Yeah.
cold shoulder treatment. Like we're kind of, I call it our adult temper tantrums. Like, I'm gonna challenge you, like, who, if you're listening, thank you first. And then
Yeah.
second, like, what kind of temper tantrum do you have?
Yeah, and then
What,
you're
how
like
does that
shocked
show
when
up?
you see that in them, like, oh, I can't believe you behave that way. But they know, they just saw you 15 minutes ago acting very similar.
That's right. They see you walking in their house, like storming
You say,
around,
don't
feeling
talk to me.
stressed.
I need a few
Yep.
minutes, but then you don't give them a few minutes, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
Or we want to give them a few minutes only when it's convenient for us to have
Mm,
those couple minutes, right? And
yeah.
so these are a lot of very common, we're not thinking that we're being, surly or unfriendly. I'm being loving. I got home, I'm tired, I need to change, I need to get dinner, we need to get to soccer practice, like all the things we do, right?
Yeah.
And or in the classroom, like first period went really poorly, like I'm just feeling super stressed, second period walks in and somebody pops off, which isn't really kind of different than normal days, but it just triggers me, and then I pop off,
Yeah.
and then I'm telling them not to.
Hmm.
So I think that it's really important that we just step back a bit and take a deep breath and just call ourselves human.
I mean, you're speaking to me right now, Lori, because this is exactly the type. I told you I have a teenager, she's a junior in high school. Junior year is rough. There's a lot going on in a junior's mind because they have to get good grades if they're planning on going to college, and she's an athlete. And this girl works out, she, on top of going to school and getting straight A's, she's working out. And it's true. I struggle with that same thing. I'll be like, I won't be able to have that mindset of saying, what are her barriers? I love the way you put that. It's like, as a parent, I'll automatically, it's not so hard for me to be like, there's a problem and you need a solution. But you're really speaking to me, because there's something in between that, saying there's barriers. The reason she came home and fell asleep and didn't clean her room is because she's exhausted, and I don't even allow myself sometimes to do that. I mean, I'm so glad that we're talking about this right now. It's going to help me as a parent, because there are a lot of barriers. And even in kids that aren't struggling with friendship, maybe it's just flat out the things you don't see every single day that they're doing in their life, like how hard it is to
Mhm.
go to a volleyball practice straight after school and then come home and be like, oh my gosh, I have to clean my room as well, you know
Right.
um
And then you have these individual humans, right? Like they're with their own priorities, and not only are they trying to find identity and all the things they're doing as they're growing up through teenage years, but then it's like, if she's going to choose something, she likes the volleyball and she doesn't like her room.
yeah.
That just kind of makes sense. I mean, she likes her room, but cleaning her room is not a priority
Nope,
for
she'd
her.
really rather spend the last few minutes talking to her boyfriend she hasn't seen all day. And like what you just said, would I not do the same thing? I'd probably do the exact same thing. So it's like us being in sync as humans with where that other person is, and then taking it the next step of what you're doing is be willing to do right what you say that you'd like them to do. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so I call it two steps further than we want to go. That's something I'll talk about in a moment.
Okay.
But being willing to, like, so let's say there, so if do you, can we just use the example of
Let's
your
use
daughter in
it.
her room?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right? So, like, that's a great example. So, and it's no different if you're talking about a teacher in a classroom when homework being turned in, or just actually pulling out a book and working on an assignment mid-class,
Mhm.
like, same kind of thing. You're asking him to do it, makes sense to you, it matters, need laundry, need some tidiness, need order, like, or I need you to learn because that's so same thing,
Yeah.
right? Different story, same concept.
Mhm.
And then we have this person who's just like, I don't see the value for me. And then we're like triggered because, like, well, it's a valuable, you need to know this lesson. Like, we have this urgency for them to not just want to do it, but also we kind of want them to agree with us, and
That's
we
what I was
want them to
just
get
gonna
on
say.
board.
I was gonna say I'll add to it that it's like a part of, like, well, I told you to do it. So you get in that mode, like, but I told you to clean your room, so therefore it should
Yeah.
be
So
done.
yeah, so then we're personalizing their you know what they're doing, their
Mhm.
behaviors or their inaction or their actions or their words or their no words, the silent treatment, whatever we get, right? We personalize it, like, I do so much for you, and didn't we just come back from soccer, and I'm doing dinner, and then and you can't even do this one thing,
Right. All I asked
right?
was your room.
And
Right. I can.
yeah, exactly. And so, that the barrier here is a multiple layers. Like, it could be just one thing, but one of the ways that I think about being able to work with them, with our students and our children, our young people, is to think about a story or something that what they're doing, not the thing, but the actual resistance or the behavior that actually shows up in your life.
Mm.
Like, oh, I wonder if me asking you to clean your room is, I wonder if you feel like I do when I'm at work and I've got my whole agenda for my day written out, and my principal comes in and says, this parent's here and you need to meet with them.
Yeah, like right now.
And suddenly, wait, like, I care about that parent, and our kids care about our feelings about them and rooms or homework and stuff. They care. They just, even when they say they don't care, they do care, I
Yeah.
believe. And, so there's this, like, oh, I wonder if you feel that way. And then you have a place to start looking at a solution, like what I did or what I do to manage my feelings and still make good on an obligation I
Yeah,
have.
it's a level deeper. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a level deeper, but if we can step into less of directive and more of understanding the possible barriers, because we can share a story about how what's happening there shows up in my life.
Yeah.
And that's one step further, right? That to me
Yeah.
is like, in order to create some kind of greater harmony, increased harmony.
Mhm.
Maybe you don't get all the way to harmony, but some increased
But
harmony, or at least
definitely
harmonic.
understanding, which is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, look, I get what I think I understand what you're dealing with in the pressure and the priorities. And for me, it shows up here. This is how I get around it. It's really not an option for me that you clean your room, but I'm willing to have a conversation with you about what you think it will take for you to be able to do that,
Yeah, that's
rather than
huge. I'm
I
even
think you should do it
yeah.
before dinner.
It's a whole different shift if you come in with that level of understanding because if even in this scenario with she's going to keep being busy this whole year. So I'll be able to use this, where if you come in and say something like, it must be a lot for you to fit in your room when you're already doing all of this. So much better. Even just that I'm thinking I could just acknowledge that it's a lot for
Yeah.
her. And I don't know if I've done that, to be totally honest. I've just been like, oh, it's time for us to do this, do that. And I'll tell her, you're doing amazing. It's just incredible the things you're doing. But that disconnect of just taking that moment, I think, is huge for all of us to just to really pause and do.
Yeah, and then that's like modeling what we want from them, right? We don't want them to walk in and boss us around or tell
No.
us how bad dinner is or how we didn't wake them up in the morning or whatever it
Yeah.
is that we're always getting wrong, because that's just
Yeah.
part of the
We're,
part of the process.
parents. Yeah, we don't know nothing.
Yeah, and even for some relationships with
True.
teachers, right? Like,
Oh,
we all
teachers right now
as
feel that.
educators.
And I mean, because you talk to educators so frequently as well as like, um, when teachers are really being honest with me, the counselor and the principal's not in the room, they'll be like, what more can I do? There's just one more. I mean, I'm never going to live up to the expectation, the pressure of it all.
Yeah.
Ugh, compassion, but it's kind of like compassion and empathy together in one package.
Well, yeah, I like to think of compassion as empathy in action.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
empathy is something, literally, I think empathy can be something we experience in ourselves and no one else knows we do at all.
That's true.
Empathy doesn't actually show up. No one knows we have empathy unless we're acting in some kind of compassionate way.
Mm,
Compassion's a verb. And for me, the way I look at them, empathy is a noun, and it's something we feel, and I can have empathy for you. But if I don't let you know, and by letting you know, I'm somehow in action or in words or
mhm.
speaking, right? So, I think that that empathy can be a silent thing that people feel, but without having the skill set, the determination to take two steps further. Like, okay, so I have empathy for this
That might
situation.
be step 1.
That's step one, like
Yeah.
two steps further. So
Mhm.
like, I can talk a little bit more about that. And that's what we were asking those parents to do. I'll bring this back around to like that field trip that you brought up. Like, we'd served 1,000 sixth graders over
Wow.
11 days, where these sixth graders came, and half the day they were jumping off high ropes, and half the day they were learning our framework about decision making, recognition of what we have, what we want, and how to get there. Like, that's what we're doing, but all of it is an experiential. So they're in a field trip setting, we're in nature, they're outdoors for most of it. And then we, in this amazing district, Westside Union School District, up in the Antelope Valley,
Wow.
their commitment to students and parents is really phenomenal, and
Wow.
it's above what I've seen in 30 years in education anywhere else.
Mm.
And they put, their resources behind what they say they want for these kids and these parents. So all these parents come. Well, it's only like it's 1,000 kids, but over 11 days, and it's one day with parents, and there's like, 100 of them. So it's not the same ratio, but they're like, you asked the kids to do this? And we're like, yep, I can't do that. Your sixth grader did, or your sixth grader will. It's not only parents of the sixth graders, it's just parents in general from the district.
Yeah.
And they're like, where you're teaching my kids this kind of like efficacy or agency and problem
Wow.
solving, and my student did this for you? Like, how do you get them to do that? I can't even get them to make their bed.
Yeah,
Same
right.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And we hear that a lot post program, and we
Yeah.
have metrics, like anonymous metrics for 700 of the 1,000 people who came.
Wow.
And literally, they're like, parents are saying, my student comes back and there's less argumentative. They do the things that I ask them to do.
Mm.
A lot of times, before I even ask them, they're more helpful, more considerate, more patient. Like when we give a student an opportunity to step into their power, and then when they want to back out of it because it feels scary or hard or boring or whatever it is that a student will be experiencing, just apply that to parents. It's the same. As
Yeah,
adults, what do we get bored with and tune out?
that's
What do
right.
we, how often do we pick up our phone and we're on it? And then when we want freedom to talk to our kids, we want them off of it, but only on our terms, not when we agree together.
Oh, hello. And how many times are parents saying you spend too much time on that phone? And then you're like, "Oh, really though?" How
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because,
How much
that
time are you on your
hypocrisy
phone?
radar,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I think of kids as having, especially once they hit 5th, 6th grade and up, their hypocrisy radars. We're
Don't
asking
tell
them to
me
do
I'm spending
something
too
that
much
we're
time
not.
on my phone.
Definitely, yeah, me too.
Oh, my daughter will
And
call
so
me out.
anyways,
She'll be sitting next to me if I'm watching a show with her. And I watch some shows with her that aren't exactly my style, but she wants me to, right? So I'm
yeah,
watching a show that is actually of very little interest, but I'm bonding with her, and then I'll check something on my phone and she go, "Mom, you missed something." I'm like, "Oh, I can't even like peek at my phone." And she's like on me.
yeah. Well, and if that's your agreement together,
Yeah.
right, then that's holding that, like,
She should hold me
that's a big one.
accountable. Yeah, I wouldn't want her if I was, same idea. I wouldn't want her to peek at her phone if something important was on. So, hey, like, oops.
Yeah, and then there's that conversation to have about, what this show is for me, what it is for you, and
Exactly.
why you're doing this. It's being with her. Yeah, so that it's
The
there's
whole
so
thing.
many things to talk about, and sometimes it's exhausting to talk about things.
Well, to be
But
honest though, like when you get them out in this situation, and I really believe that people should, even teachers should take their kids out of the classroom sometimes and just do a walk, because when you take them out of their element that you're in and you're out in nature like you were in that situation, um, everything's different about the conversation. It's like a freeing of the mind, a little bit when you
mm,
change the environment and you really experience things like you were saying.
yeah, and in this field trip again that the adults do and the kids do, the because we're human needing to have some aha moments, all of us, and needing to face our barriers. Like, so we're asking kids to face barriers, to overcome them. You've got this. And we're giving them all this rah cheerleading stuff. And I'm not counting that out, but it's not the same as I want you to go into the store and buy that thing that you want,
Right.
and I'll be right outside the door. I don't want to do it. You do it.
Yeah.
Well, we're not really teaching them the agency of like, you've got this. Now I've got you. I can see through the window. This is an exact story of my son. On Fridays, it used to be 7-Eleven Slurpees when he's, 30 now, but
Yeah.
and I would be like, if you want that on Fridays, I'll sit in front of the door of 7-Eleven in the car and you go in and buy it. And more now, I have parents who are like, they'll, they'll, kids will refuse, but the parent will go do it. So they still get the Slurpee or the ice cream or
Yeah.
whatever, the game time, whatever. But there's no developing those
Yeah.
2 steps further than you believe you can go. So my son was nervous. And so a couple times he'd be like, I don't want a Slurpee then. I'm like, okay, no
Fine
problem.
with me. Yeah.
And we just went home. And then other times, no, I want that. Right. So he would go in and learned to talk to another person, learned to
Yeah.
pay for something. And those were 2 steps further. Like I had his back. Nothing was going to happen to
Mm-mm.
him that I couldn't see,
Yeah.
that I couldn't be right there. Right. But he needed to experience that for himself, that I've got this, I can do this, I can actually hand somebody money and fill up a Slurpee cup. And like those things are important. And our kids now really restrain and pull back from those things that I think when I grew up, it was sort of common sense. You're just going to do it. When my kids grew up, they wanted to push back, and I probably did more than I should have. And then, you know, And now, like, I think it's even worse.
Yeah.
And so many of our kids and our parents don't want to step into anything uncomfortable.
Wow.
But I don't
Yeah.
think we grow. I don't think we develop. And I don't think we prep our kids
I do think
for,
that that's been the trend where people, the pendulum swung where they were like thinking about their feelings, which is so, so important, but
yeah,
not thinking about what they're preparing them for. And so some of the preparation for the life that they need to live, it slipped away because it was like, well, that just might be that's making them feel a certain type of way, and sometimes the uncomfortable feeling is if they don't get to the other side of that, then they can't grow kind of situation.
well, yeah, I think that growth comes from getting to the other side or not getting to the other side and then making a different decision on how to go about it a different way the next time.
Yeah, so you got to let them, you got
I
to let
call
them.
it yeah, just exactly what you were just talking about. I call it the 1882 rule.
Okay.
And yeah, so if we give our kids, let's just bless our kids with 100 years,
Okay.
healthy, happy, adjusted, resilient years. We all know life's hard. So there's not going to be 100 years for any of us that we just skate through.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Yep.
Right. And so we bless to say all of our listeners, everybody here's got kids, they get 100 years. Well, we have 18 years of that to
Mm.
prepare them to do a really good job with the other 82. So
Oh.
we have 18% of our kids' lives to prepare them to be able to navigate the other 82% of their
Wow, that
lives.
is so true and so amazing when you look at it that way. I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's big for, I think,
I
for
love
kind of
it.
any of us, like, oh, so when we want to we could serve, if we want to save them from a discomfort,
Yeah.
instead of empower them, like, look, I'm going to be right here, you take that step, two steps further. So if they
Mhm.
take one step, they're more apt to take the second. And when they take two, and the analogy here is when our kids are climbing or our parents are climbing on ropes courses and they're petrified. I'm afraid of heights and I can't do this and I'm shaking and now I'm crying and all these things are happening. We're like, two steps further than you think you can go.
Yeah.
Now, think is belief, right? So there's two parts to it. Two steps further than I believe or think I can go. Because what we believe is that little voice that is so often disparaging to us.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so often like, you can't do this, you'll look silly, you're crying, people are going to laugh. And really, what's happening is people are like basically holding them, looking up at them like, you've got this, you've
Right.
got this.
And that's not and
And
our mind is trying to just sabotage the whole situation. Yeah.
correct. Yes. And so if I know I'm going two steps further than I believe I can, then that means I have to take that first step further, which is the
Mhm.
hardest step, right? Whatever it is. It might be the first nice word when I want to say something not nice.
Mhm.
It might be the first math problem when I was going to give up the whole assignment because I feel I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, or it might be
Right.
a big thing, even bigger. There might be there's people that are waiting on a project, like
Yes.
before we got on the air and I told you how long it took me to push record for the podcast. I mean, it starts with something as small as that, but sometimes there's something burning in someone's heart and they need to take the first and then the second step,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah,
Well, what I find is, yeah, or maybe it's asking for help or support, like somebody
right.
who has, some kind of a very traumatic event happening in their life,
Yeah.
and they're journeying alone on it,
And that little voice
and
says,
they,
"Oh, don't bother them. They don't wanna be bothered." And then the truth is they're, like, more than happy, to be there. Yeah, that's so interesting.
yeah, and so but that first word out, would you,
Uh,
could you, or maybe the first step is just walking into the space where a trusted adult is. I'm just going to show up
mhm.
there. And a trusted adult who knows this young person, or a trusted friend who knows this adult, you and me, a trusted person, right? Like, maybe I don't even have the words, but if I show up, if I just step into the space of somebody,
Mhm.
pick up the phone and call, send a text, hi, and somebody's going to say hi back. What's up? And then I took that first step, and then, whatever that second invitation is, to take the second step, send the next text, say, when a student walks in and you're looking at them. Your daughter's just like, looks like she's ready to burst into tears, but isn't going
Mhm.
to tell you, right? She's exhausted. She wants to please you and not really at the same time because her room's not a priority.
Yep.
So, but she's conflicted because she cares and she's conflicted and she doesn't know how to put that in words. So your first step is like, let's just talk about what's happening for you, not
Mm.
about your room.
Mhm,
First
mhm.
step. And then she might respond and then gives you your second step.
I like
And
that.
so often as parents with surly teenagers, right? Uncertain, you don't know what's
And we're
coming,
telling
which
them the
one you're
next
going to
10
get.
steps right there.
Teen A or personality A or personality B, which one am I going to get right now if I ask you this, right?
That's so true.
Or parent, they think the same thing about us
I
too.
bet
Am
you.
I going to get patient mom or am I going to get like impatient mom?
Like, "Oh, you're in a mood."
Yes,
That's
exactly. And so they might not approach us with
yeah.
the same kind of consideration that they know how to do, but they're not using.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it doesn't like the two steps, like moving beyond want and belief. So, I don't want to do homework. That's an answer. And like being able to look past our nose and like, but I do want to graduate high school, or I
Yeah.
do want to please my parents, or I do not want to be grounded on the weekend, whatever the want is, right? If we can take a step beyond the thing that the want that's going to stop us,
Mm.
and then a step beyond the belief that's going to stop
That's
us. I
huge.
can't do
Yeah.
this, right? As soon as we get past want and belief and take the first step, the second's a little bit easier. And by the time, like think about walking downstairs, you're like one, two, and then the third step's just coming right
Yeah.
along. Yeah. It's really the start.
Yeah.
It's the startups that's the hardest. And it's again, it's both for us as adults and for our kids.
And I absolutely love the mental thought in our mind where we can say 2 steps because anybody can conceptualize that and it doesn't feel too hard, but the honest thing is it almost tricks your mind into believing that it can do the whole dang thing when just a few
Yes.
seconds later earlier, they were not believing that. That's so wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, and like for our climbers, like some kids will most of the time, I'd say 85 to 90% of those who are like, I'm not doing it at all. It's not an option. You harness, you helmet, you approach.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, because if you don't harness and helmet, you can't approach. So you're
True.
not safe. So if you're not safe, you can't try it. And then you haven't even given it even a thought of one step further, right?
Right.
So you harness, you helmet, you approach. And at that point, kids who are like, I can't do that, I can't do that. They're looking up, or the parents on this parent day, I can't do this.
Uh-huh.
They take those two steps, and 90% of them get to the top.
Yeah.
And
That's
then the
so
others
great.
who don't, like you have a place to start, which is really great for our kids who are nervous. They might be emotionally charged. They might be
Uh-huh.
emotionally like not charged, but like shut down, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Some
we
really
can
big
get them
barrier.
to the
Yeah.
two steps, we have something to celebrate.
Yes.
And each person, their two steps is further. So we ask them to like, let's meet them right where they are.
Mhm.
We might not like where they are. We might not understand where they are,
That's where they
but
are. Yeah.
where they are. So if a student is like, I don't get out of bed in the morning to go to school, and it's a big issue every day, which we know with school, right? School resistance
Big
to
time.
school or to
Yeah.
attendance. One step might be literally putting feet on the floor.
Yeah.
Now that feels like so small, but for that student or that child, that young human who's
Mm.
just not understanding everything about what's going on with them, it is progress.
Yeah.
And then what's step two? So like, and even ahead of time, ask like, hey, tomorrow morning, we're going to go two steps further than you believe or want to go. So what we know you want is to stay in bed. Two steps further than that. What you believe is that you will somehow fall apart, like that
Yeah.
emotionally you won't be able to handle it. So what are two steps that you can define, you can say
Yeah, put the
that
ball in
you'll
their
do
court.
that I can support you with?
And we all know that when they come up with a solution, they're far more likely to follow through with it. So,
Yeah. And sometimes it might even take us going, that feels like a really big step.
yeah.
Do you think, do you want to pick something between those two
Yeah,
places?
and
No,
if they're
I got it.
younger kids will accidentally do that. They wanna go straight from, 0 to 10, and you're like, "Well,
Yep.
Hmm.
I'm gonna get up on time and be on the
Yeah,
bus or,
I'm good.
be in the car. Like, yeah,
Quicker
okay.
than I ever
So
have before.
yeah, and then we don't have to, like, even downplay that. We
Right.
literally can be like, "Okay,
That's
so
amazing
if
goal.
you
Yeah.
go that far, that's great, and we're gonna celebrate if you get this far."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, like,
They need a
so not to
win.
say that you won't get that far, but when you hit teeth brushing,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a
we'll
win. Yeah.
celebrate.
Because
That's a
those
win,
little
and that's step
wins.
1,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
second step is that you actually got downstairs to have breakfast with me on time,
It's
right? Or
huge.
whatever what yeah. It's huge, and if we give them the agency to be a part of the decision of what 2 steps are, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, so you're
And
not
then we flip
dictating
it.
what that 1 or 2 steps looks like depending on, like, even though you're in a workshop, you're not necessarily dictating, no, you need to figure out what their 2 steps are. We're going this far. The ball is in that person's court, and you teach them to have that agency. Okay.
And to think.
I'm picturing it now.
Yeah, like yeah, teach them like, okay, so what would be 2 steps,
Yeah.
right? Well, 2 steps would be 2 math problems on the homework that I wasn't gonna do at all.
Right.
Okay. And if I get success on those 2 problems, there's a chance I'm gonna go further.
Yeah.
But if I don't take the 2 steps, I've stopped because of want and belief.
Mhm.
And those are limiting,
So
right? You
limiting.
know, it's so limiting to not step into possibility, and you can't step into possibility if you don't step.
I know, and it's like what we talked about earlier, that sense of that feeling of, you can identify it as fear or excitement, whatever people want to identify it as. That's a human emotion that we need to be able to have the ability to feel and get through in life. So just by taking 2 steps further than what you believed you could, you're feeling a mini little feeling like that and conquering it. And then
Yes.
again, and that's so, so important for our well-being, so important for our growth.
And we can measure it, right? Like, okay, I don't want to pick up the phone and call my mom, or I don't want to deal with this, colleague that
Whatever
we
it
have a
is.
problem
Yeah.
with, whatever it is. And, showing up, picking up the phone, sending the text, like I shared before, like that one step, and then one more. And so often that just gets a conversation started that's not nearly as scary as we thought it was going to be.
Oh my
We
gosh.
blew it up into our head as such a big thing. And suddenly we're just talking to this person and we're resolving something. Or maybe there's not even something to resolve
Yeah.
because we sort of made something big that happened inside of us really big and it's not really big for them. And
Uh-huh.
oh,
And
right. Like so
it's
often.
so huge. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
these little tiny things, what I'm learning and relearning again just through having this amazing conversation is just the little things in our life can make huge, huge outcomes. If we, the outcome that we will get from the small choices we make is amazing, because it can change everything about the way we think, which changes everything about how we approach our life, you know?
Yeah, and then that changes everything about the results we experience.
Yeah. And not to mention our relationships with the people that we're now having the right kind of compassion for. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the compassion for ourselves. Like, it's really lovely also to think about what is the belief that is stopping me?
Mm.
Like, that awareness is big even, right? Like,
Not
my
judging
belief.
yourself, right or wrong. What is it? Yeah.
Right, right, right. And then having compassion for ourselves, like, oh, I believe that this is going to be an argument. I don't like arguments.
Yeah.
I avoid confrontation, but this is unresolved. And so I'm not actually treating this person all that respectfully. I don't feel good about myself because I'm sort of snippy with this person. And like, I don't like that about me. So
But, like,
what do I
now at
really
least we're
want?
dealing with reality, right? And not some made up thing that's not even true. So, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And just, I think that, if you asked your audience, how many of us really have blown so much more out of proportion than what actually happened when we gave it just a little bit of effort to
I
fix,
think we
to
collectively
solve, to
all raise our
resolve.
hands, like, collectively, like, yes.
Like, how much? Yeah, like, I just think there's so much drama
Yeah.
in the world that could be so easily reduced into ease and flow if we could just take those 2 steps and
Yeah.
move beyond belief and kind of get around sort of like the want thing, which is really about convenience, but it's not definitely about growth very often.
Yeah, and sometimes it's flat out fear-based. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just not even true like we already talked about. I am looking forward to, and I hope everyone listening today, to kind of reframing our next week, in our next 2 days, to when we feel that little pause on something we should be doing. It might even be, turning in something at the DMV or something weird, but whatever we feel that pause on, that maybe we'll remember, hopefully, I know I will, these words and say, "Can I take 2 steps farther than I right now believe that I can?" And the excuses of, "Well, you're far too busy," and, "Oh, well, da 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 da," that we can just put those to rest and choose to take the 2 steps and then see what happens. I'm encouraged. So I'm glad you're breaking this down.
If you have an audience that's like doing their 2 steps, what are those results? And wouldn't
Right?
that be fun to
Email
hear
me.
people's
Yeah.
stories?
Yeah. It's just the smallest thing, and then maybe that inspired the next really big, big thing.
Right.
And everything is a big thing in some ways. My little teenager right now is the baby, so I want to just enjoy every single moment that I have. And me stepping into this place that we're talking about right now, I'm just kind of realizing as we're talking, like, that's part of enjoying her. Meeting her
Yeah.
where she's at and being able to have a peek into where she's at is part of my enjoyment of her growing up and knowing her for, like you said, the very short time that we're really given to be in the role of, raising our kids.
So important. And what something you just said about her and this, but it reminded me of the thought of thinking that in taking the 2 steps for ourselves, we're not putting the responsibility on somebody else to fix the problem.
Mm.
Because you were talking, I was just like, it felt so beautiful to me to hear you talk as a mom
Yeah.
about wanting this relationship with her, but none of your conversation was about what she needed to do in order for you to have that relationship. It was about what you could do, what
Right.
you now, how you reframe how I might approach her. I look forward to hearing like whatever 2 steps you take in that realm with her and like how it goes. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I think of kids and they're kind of like, wait, what?
It's funny
What's
because
happening here?
yeah, and it is funny because, you mentioned earlier how we learn and we grow, right? So, my oldest kids that are adults have watched me learn so much about this brain research and so much about what I share on this podcast, and they see the way I raised the younger one, and they're like, "Where was that mom when we were growing up?" Because we have to adjust, and when we see something that's a little off and we're getting, just like the moment that I shared with you, that I'm getting too caught up with the things that actually don't matter. It's beautiful to be able to step into a place where you're growing. That's where we all should try and be. I'm so thankful that I learned what I did. As much as my kids turned out amazingly, sometimes I'm like, wow, you did that in spite of all the dumb things that I did when you were little.
Okay, there you go. I think if I was raising kids today, they'd say both of my kids would say the same thing.
They're
Like,
like, where was it?
where was that?
Yeah,
You were a counselor. How come you got it wrong? Like, I
exactly.
don't think they
It's
don't
not
say
even
that,
wrong,
right? Like
really.
my kids are beautiful humans
No,
and strong and have high EQ, right? Like, but
but my oldest does joke
also
with
they're
me.
humans who felt affected by
Mhm,
things that I wasn't good at or things that I was not taking 2 steps further, and that's probably the biggest one, especially with my
yeah.
daughter, things that I was retreating from rather than taking ownership of,
Mm,
and I wasn't as strong of a person as I am today, and,
mhm.
that had impact on my kids, and, I wish we could reel it back, we can't, you know?
But the cool thing is too, is that I think you surely have had this experience too, where having that humble heart even with them as adults is so healing, and it's almost like you did do it differently. Like if I'll joke with my daughter and say, "Well, sorry, if you know better, you do better. You were out of luck. You're my first one." But then I will sometimes still go back and say what you just said, like, "Wow, I really wish that I could have done that differently." I feel
Yeah.
like I told you what to do more than asking you what you needed, when you were growing up with my oldest. And then you kind of see this collective, like, oh, she understands me. And it's almost like you can heal that tiny little place that So it's like it's always good when we grow and learn to just be humble in the right kind of way, even when we're
Yeah.
even when they're
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah. Even when humble's hard,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, because I mean, we're thankful. I'm thankful for this time I've had with you. I knew that you would. I knew through learning more about what you did at that workshop that it would help me too, and so it's been beautiful. I'm so thankful that you came. Do you do these
well,
workshops like actually out there right now? Is that something you're still
oh,
doing? Or
yeah, we're training all the time. I have a training team. I train sometimes and have a training team, but our trainings are fun.
yeah,
We have like so much fun, and I have a friend of mine, and she's also a trainer for me. She's like, what? We are not death by PowerPoint. And
yeah.
I am make
Thank
sure I
God.
say that. Like we are, there might be a slide for those of you who are really visual, but really we're up and like confronting even our anxiety,
Yeah,
and I'll say like everybody's going to get up, and I'm like, and how many of you just instantly went into anxiety? Well,
all
that's
of
what
them. Yeah,
happens with your kids. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're with your kids in the front of you in a classroom. You say, this is what we're going to do now, and then some of them just shut down. They're like, I'm out, and they can't, right? So that bridging things, but in such a way that feels empowering
yeah.
and
Well, I
like a
did get a taste
collective
of that.
experience.
I did get a taste of that with your workshop because we were both at the California Counselors Conference. I had a workshop, you had a workshop. Thank God it wasn't at the same time. I hate that when that happens, when someone I really want to. So I was like, cool, I can run in there. And I experienced some of what you're talking about because we definitely didn't stay in our seats. We were in circles, we were in action, and it felt very authentic that way. At the beginning it's uncomfortable, but then it feels good because it feels good when we're in motion. So really I'm thinking I want you to be able to have the opportunity to how do people sign up or find out about these workshops if they want to bring it into the district they're at or let people know about it?
Well, thank you for asking. So at allittakes.org or trustedspace.org, it takes you all to
Like we
us.
said, it's a funnel for it all, right?
It's a funnel for it all. And then there's a tab for professional development.
Oh, okay.
And so we have professional development where we're, like I said, 1,000 sixth graders in the field on these massive, amazing field trips
Yeah.
where we're developing high level SEL skills in real time that are transferable. We're developing agency. They're outdoors. They're hiking. Some of these kids have never been on a trail before,
Wow.
and that's just what their life experience has been. So we're giving them a new experience, right?
Yeah.
And then the adult trainings are so much fun,
Yeah.
50, 60 adults in a room. Sometimes, most of our trainings with adults aren't in the field on ropes courses.
Yeah.
I invite all of you to come do that because as terrifying as that sounds, it is the most liberating thing.
Yeah.
I actually have a really fun picture of me kind of hanging upside down on a ropes course, swinging into the sunset.
Yeah.
That really is my two steps. There was a
Yeah.
time when I was like, I've been in a lot of trainings lately. I'm asking kids to do this, and I haven't climbed in a while, and I don't like to climb, and it scares me. And every now and then I climb anyways because I
Mhm.
need to show me that I'm not the hypocrite asking
Mhm.
others to do what I won't do. So
Yeah.
I don't climb every time. That would be a lot of climbing, but I climb every few years simply to demonstrate both to myself and whomever is around that yep, I'm not just asking and telling you to trust us. I'm saying I trust us too, and I'm going to put my trust in
Yeah.
you to conquer my fear.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's probably so powerful to the people that walk away from there because they have heard it, but then they've experienced it. And
Yes.
the reason that picture means a lot to you is because right away you could put yourself in that moment, and you're
Yeah.
like, I know what that's like, and I did it.
Yep, and I know what the 2 steps are,
Yeah.
and also, I wanna be somebody who is willing to do
What
pick
you
up the trash I'm asking others to pick up,
Me
right?
too.
Same thing.
I feel
Yeah,
you, and if it was easy, then we do it all the time, but the fact that it's hard
right.
means we just gotta that's why this is something we need to work on, and
Yes.
it's something we need to care about and be aware of, so, now that we all heard you talk, we're all accountable because we can't say we never heard that this is a great way.
That's right.
You
That's right,
can't
you
say you
can't
never heard it.
unring the bell, right? Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's what I say to kids. The good news is I saw what you're capable of.
right?
The bad news is I saw
what
what
you're
you're
capable
capable
of.
of.
Exactly. So we know where to go. We have to wrap this up, unfortunately, but we're going to talk again. I know you have some amazing things happening in the future that with your writing, and hopefully we'll bring you back on to be able to get more of the amazing things that you're putting out in the world. But right now, I just want to truly thank you. And is there anything that you feel that people need to know that you wish that everybody knew? Just take this minute to let my audience know what that would be. That you
I wish everybody really knew, not in concept, but in embodiment, how special they were.
Mm,
Like, really, how special they were, and that they believed in their specialness, even if they haven't found it yet. That's what I wish everybody knew.
that's beautiful. Well, thank you again for coming. You guys could check the show notes to get more of what Lori has. But really, this has been a pleasure. This has been way too fun. Well, we're going to do this again for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Cher, for bringing me on, and it has been so much fun.
Thank you, each and every one of you, for listening today. I know you have lots of choices for podcasts, and I want to let you know I'm grateful for you. And until next time, live solution focused.